This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, welcome to PIX on Politics. It is Monday. It is September 15th. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic weekend. And as I say, almost every time we come on, you miss a minute, you miss a lot, right? So let's get a little recap on the race for New York City mayor and what played out over the weekend. In fact, just yesterday on Sunday, there was a post on X about the potential of Mayor Adams once again dropping out of the race. And it quickly picked up steam, and the spokesperson, Todd Shapiro, sent me a text right away, and it was probably his most powerful statement yet, where he said any rumor about the mayor is complete, and I quote, BS, except he fully said the phrase. And he said he's in it to win it. That the Mayor Adams is going absolutely nowhere. And while that was all kind of going on, we had Governor Kathy Hochul, who had not endorsed in the race for mayor, coming out with an endorsement for Zohran Mamdani. And she did it in an op-ed post in the New York Times. You know, you think about some of the past interviews I've done with Governor Hochul, where she was probably right here on PIX on Politics, the first time she said it's a non-starter, non-negotiable about raising taxes, something Zohran Mamdani wants to do. And she said it was a non-negotiable. But since that first initial interview I did with Governor Hochul about the race for mayor, she had said she met with Zohran Mamdani a number of times. The two of them were finding common ground. And a lot of folks in the Democratic Party are saying the Democrats need to support the Democratic nominee and fall in line. Now, the ones that haven't done so yet are Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, the two most prominent probably in New York with national profiles. So that's where we're at with the race for mayor. And you also had Jim Walden, who was on this show last week. Remember, he was here to talk about how he wanted his name not to appear on the ballot. And he was going to go to court and try to get his name removed from the ballot. The Board of Elections denied him, so he had to go to court. And it looked like it was going to work in his favor. He said the judge temporarily said that his name shouldn't appear on the ballot. And then he went to the court date, and it turned out that his name will appear on the ballot. Judge ruled against him, which means that any candidate moving forward, say Eric Adams were to drop out, his name would likely appear on the ballot. And so that's where we're at with those things. But there is another candidate. Now, remember when Jim Walden was here, he was talking about how he wanted to see this coalescing around one specific candidate to get to go against Zohran Mamdani. He said that needed to be Andrew Cuomo. So he hoped others, Curtis Sliwa, himself, Mayor Adams, and this other individual, Joseph Hernandez, would drop out and coalesce around one person to go against Zohran Mamdani, being Andrew Cuomo. So we haven't spoken to Joseph Hernandez, right? Let's bring him onto the show now and talk more about him. So Joseph Hernandez, independent candidate for New York City mayor. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Dan. Thanks for having me on your show.
So let's talk about first the reality of it all, right? I mean, this is my first conversation with you, but why do you think when you're looking at things, right, you're not even included in some of these polls with all due respect? Why do you think you have a chance?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think one thing is clear when we speak to individuals and I present my case as to why I should be running the city, I get overwhelming support. Yes, I'm behind in terms of the polls, and certainly I entered the race a little bit later than most of the other individuals did. But I think my message is one of logic, one of sanity. And I think when you compare me, my competence level in terms of my ability to operate things, I've been operating companies my whole entire life. I'm in it for the right reasons. I love this city. I'm owned by nobody. And I have a very solid plan to address the three critical issues that the city faces, which is, we have an issue with public safety. We need to bring more police officers, and that's part of my plan. Plan to hire 10,000 police officers. We have an affordability issue, but free rent and free buses are not going to solve the problem, unfortunately. I think that's very, very nearsighted and doesn't really impact the overall issue, which is vacancy. We have a 1.4% vacancy rate in New York City. It should be 7%, which means we have to build 132 new housing units. I have a plan for that basically gets those units back on the market in 2 years. That will impact the cost of living in New York City, not this crazy idea of freezing rents or giving handouts. The other thing that's a big part of my strategy is I'm a technologist. I think New York City should be leading in technology. We have a really solid plan to introduce artificial intelligence to solve the big problems we have, both around safety, around cleanliness of the city. The city is so messy. I have never seen the city so messy for the last 10 years or so that I lived in the city. An issue of just basic pothole repairs, making sure the garbage is picked up. I don't know about you, Dan, but every time I walk around the city, all the garbage cans are full of trash. Why aren't we solving that problem? Anyway, I think we can solve that with technology. I think, when I speak to people around New York City, when I share my message, my experience, my background, everybody supports me, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or centrists. My message will resonate. I just need to get out there, and while I'm behind the race, I've always been here. I'm an immigrant. My dad washed dishes. My mom cleaned houses. I know what it's like to be in last place, but I succeed because nobody has the perseverance that I do.
So you did mentioned it, right? So I'll get to some of those issues in a bit because I did do the research on some where you stand on some of the issues, which is important to talk about. But you did join the race late, right? And
Yes.
now we are 7 Mondays away from Election Day, and we're talking about people dropping out of the race, not joining the race. And so,
Right.
how do you kind of when the noise is all right now? Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Adams, Curtis Sliwa, one of them needs to go against Zohran Mamdani. Why do you think you're going to be able to break through the noise, and how? How do you break through the noise then?
Well, look, I have to tell you, we have just begun getting in front of the media like yourselves. It just happened 2 weeks ago. We have been trying to get in front of media for probably 3.5 months. The media is a machine that does not want to hear stories that are new, and in my opinion, that are better for New York City. I think if you compare me just on an unbiased basis, both my experience, my education, my success record, my logical approach to how to run the city, I win hands down all the
So
time. And
let
I'm
me
not
let me
just
let me ask you that let me just pick up on that for a second because Jim Walton said something very similar along the
yeah,
lines of like as if the media is in charge of who becomes the front runner in the race, right?
yeah, yeah.
But with on the other side of that, from the flip side, and respectfully, I say it. Why should the media pay attention to folks who aren't necessarily the front runners, right? And who aren't even polling or on anyone's radar? Because there's a reality that has to come to fruition here about who to pay attention to.
You know what's so ironic? I think the other more competent person in this race was Jim Walden. It's a
Mhm.
shame that an individual like that, who is not biased, a logical human being, who's got nobody owns that guy like
Yeah.
nobody owns me. And the fact that he didn't get visibility is really a testament to how incredibly poor the media does or job does in covering people who are really competent people who are not career politicians that just we run companies. He's a lawyer. He practices his own law. He just said, you know what, this city is poorly run. I am the citizen politician, which by the way was the original concept of the founders of our constitution.
Mhm.
Not these career politicians. Every time somebody says I've been in politics my whole career, I cringe. Our founding fathers are rolling in their grave. That wasn't the intent. The intent was people like me and Jim to raise our hand and say, you know what, we can run the city better. We can run this government better. Give us a chance. We'll hang up our hats for a few years. We will do our service, then we'll go back to society. That is exactly what our founding fathers saw. And the media is doing an incredibly crappy job at covering people like us. It is really a shame. You guys should be ashamed of yourself. I'm not saying you critically and individually, but the media as a whole. I can tell you, the New York Times knows about me. They refuse to write about me. I can tell you, it wasn't until we harassed the Post to write about us that eventually they carried our story. The media is not an unbiased entity in this process, and it's a shame. And you guys should really reflect on that.
Well, I'm not going to debate you on the issues of the media, but because
Of course not.
well only and the
Yeah,
reason I'm not is because it's the voter right now is trying to pick a mayor for New York City. They don't want to hear
right.
whether or not the media. But I will say it's up to the individual candidate too to get the message out there. And I saw your website, but a way to do that is outreach and social media. And so do you
Yeah.
feel that you can connect with a voter more than just a website?
For sure. I mean, look, we're out there, we're shaking hands. Again, we're not a political machine like the Democratic Party has, or Zoran has, or Cuomo has, for that matter. We are just representative of citizens of our city. We're using the vehicles we have, we're using the resources we have. I can tell you, I personally put a lot of money into this campaign because I really believe in my mission. I don't do it because I expect a return on that investment.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I love the city, and I think first of all, the city's been spinning out of control for 8 years. We've had incredibly crappy management for the last 8 years through our last two mayors. We're about to have another horrible one, which I think is a travesty to New York City. I think New York City, we won't recognize it in 4 years from now if this
So-
individual who's leading the charge will win.
You mentioned public safety, right? And that is a huge issue for so many. We see it in the polling. And so
Yeah.
you mentioned a plan to make the city more safe. How do you plan to do it? What is it? Is it to bring more officers on board? And if it is to bring more officers on board, where are you getting the money for it?
Yeah, for sure. No, so look, our plan is to bring 10,000 new police officers on board. We can do that pretty effectively. I think if you look at the overtime budget, it's about $1 billion in overtime budget. When you calculate the entry level salary, the training of those officers, you can hire about 8,000 police officers with that money. The other point here that needs to be highlighted is that the budget right now is completely the fattest budget I've ever seen. I have, as an individual who looks at financial documents every day, I can tell you there's $15 billion of trash and fat in this budget that can't be cut. I can allocate another 2,000 police officers to that budget just from cleaning up the BS that exists in that
Would
budget.
Would you keep Jessica Tisch?
You know, I actually don't mind her. I think, you know, when you speak to police officers, they want to be led by cops. I mean, I think that's kind of a universal message. I think operationally, she's, you know, a smart person. I haven't dismissed that. You know, if I was so lucky to become mayor, I think we really need but we need strong leadership. There's no question. I think the morale is incredibly low. You speak to any police officers, they'll tell you, you know, I just do the minimum because, you know, I can't do more, because if I do more, I'm the bad guy, or I'm the risk of losing my job or losing my house, because, you know, there's personal exposure. So I think we need strong leadership. I think, you know, part of the plan of hiring, in addition to hiring 10,000 police officers, I want to bring back grid patrolling, which allows police officers to interact more with their community. I think that's a big, important piece of it. I mentioned AI. AI can be an immense tool in solving not only crime, but also preventing crime. Look, for example, people jumping the turnstile, about 50% of those people have active warrants out for them. Why aren't we doing something about that? Why aren't we ensuring that people who jump the turnstile, in fact, get encountered by the police, because they're likely to have a warrant out for their arrest? I mean, there's a lot of issues, a lot of things we can do. The other thing I want to do around, you know, public safety is, our prosecutors have done a really, really bad job at prosecuting criminals. It is a revolving door. It demoralizes police. It demoralizes people that are the victims, that have to go in front of the court, put these statements forward, and then even before the ink dries, both on the police report and the victim statements, these people are out again committing crime. So you have to prosecute more aggressively. I want to bring in the federal prosecutors here that have a 90% conviction rate, that do not let these people walk out. There's no parole opportunity if you have prosecuted at the federal level.
I'm almost out of time here, but I want to ask you about your relationship with President Trump, right? He had just put out a statement this morning saying that the Governor Hochul, since she endorsed Mamdani, he's going to take a real look at the pocketbook and what he gives to New York, right? So what's your relationship with the president?
Look, I am a logical business guy. I have dealt with the extremes of ideological people in negotiating deals. I can cut a deal with President Trump. I know I think there's
What's
a
the
lot of
deal
logic
for?
in what he says. And look, the deal requires us that we get public safety. I don't think he's wrong. New York is not a safe city. I think if you ask any resident in New York City whether they feel safe riding the subways, they will tell you no, because it's true. New York City is not safe. It's dirty. It's got potholes. It is a travesty what's happened to the city. And I intend, if I'm so lucky to get the attention in the next couple of weeks, to change that immediately, because it should be changed. And the only way to do that is to have somebody who really knows what they're doing. And unfortunately, the choices we have right now are incredibly poor.
Okay. Is there, for you, Jim, Joe, when you look at this, is there a timeline for you, right? Are you not, I don't know if you're going to be on the debate stage, if you qualify for the debates or not, but is there a timeline where you say, okay, it's just not a reality for me?
Well, we also have a case kind of working through its court. We sued the city to bring back ranked choice voting, which would basically get rid of this issue. You know, we expect that that'll move here pretty quickly. So if that comes into play, this is a non-issue. I, like all the other parties involved here, don't want Mamdani to run this city. I think it will be a complete failure of all of us to let a gentleman with that ideology run our city. So I'm going to assess that. But the reality is, right now, I'm working full time, 100% of the time, to make sure that people hear my message. And again, it resonates. My message is logical. I am about logic and bringing the city back to be the best city it can be, the best city in the world, which has been historically. And we're about to lose that.
Okay. Come on back soon. I know you're critical of the media, but we try to be fair and balanced to everybody. So come on back soon, okay?
We appreciate the exposure, and I thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, everybody, and that'll do it for Picks on Politics Daily today. So we hope that's just one of many conversations as we continue paying close attention to the race for New York City Mayor, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.